Thank you for visiting my channel and listening to one of my audio experience stories. This story is called By My Convictions, The Barrister. This is one of a series of short stories that I've created. The series is called By My Convictions, and The Barrister is the first of that series. Based on a dystopian future after a UK rebellion that changes the legal, political and social landscape in Britain forever. I really hope you enjoy this story and the others that are on this channel. If you like it, please comment, share and subscribe. I always want to hear people's feedback on my work. That's the reason why I put it on. I really enjoy creating it. I am learning to enjoy recording it, and as time goes on, I'm hoping that I will get more of a pace in my the way that I speak. So, thank you again, and I really hope you enjoy the story. Thank you. I had entered the court many times in the past. I knew the route to the prosecution desk at the front of the court like the back of my hand. No matter which court it was, 1, 7, 14, they all had the same layout. The public gallery was behind me as I strode down the middle gangway, the jury box to my left, the family and media seating to my right. I approached the front of the court. It was court 12 today. The court I would spend at least the next 14 days in, 8 hours a day. I shuffled behind the prosecutor's desk, which sat at the left of the front of the court, directly facing the judge's podium and the jury box looking down from the left-hand side of the desk. On the desk lay a pile of files, boxes containing further files surrounding the desk, each containing a part of a story that had rocked the country, actually no, the world, for the past 2 years. I knew the court. I was comfortable with the process of standing as chief prosecution barrister in high-profile cases. Not a single one made me feel this small and this terrified. This was that case, the one that would make or break my career. I was a 35-year-old woman that was the first barrister to be sworn in since the overhaul of the legal system 10 years earlier, and this was the first time that new system was going to use the full extent of its power to execute the first person in Britain since the 13th of August 1964, almost 100 years ago to the day. The new Bailey stood on the same site that had previously housed the old Bailey. The centuries-old impending building that had once taken up this very space I occupied had been destroyed during the decade-long rebellion that preceded the democratic decommissioning, back in the late 2040s and early 2050s. The People's Republic of New Great Britain had been formed in the wake of the 2054 expulsion of the Houses of Parliament and the monarchy, making way for a new era of people's rule and the political, legal and social system being reimagined, and in 2055 the country reborn under the People's Leadership Panel, a board of 25 normal people that rewrote laws, created a new tax system and what was termed an every citizen heard political system. By the end of 2055, the death penalty was reinstated, and this was the test case for a decade in the making, ultimate solution to deter and punish the worst people in society. I had been handpicked as a rising star of the last 10 years of prosecution cases, from murder to other violent offences, a 100% success rate of conviction and maximum sentencing. This had led me to where I now sat, as the cameras were being set up for the international live, multi-platform feed of the trial of Paul Letterman, aka the new Londinium Batterer. Paul would be the first person to be tried under the vile crimes and social justice law that warranted the death penalty, if the public voted for it, of course. And 78% of New Great Britain felt that this man deserved to die for his crime. As I sat at the front of the court officials filtered into the room and the room fills with the noise of expensive shoes and conversation. In the main part, the chatter and the attention was aimed at the recording equipment being set up by social media platforms and the new Great Britain vlogging sites. These would be the first live stream court sessions in New Great Britain, and everyone was on edge about it. The defence barrister had made a very public statement denouncing the practice, and he was currently engaging in a very animated discussion with the NGB news stream team, which seemed to not be going at all in his favour. I moved my focus back to the boxes and files, reading through the case notes and my pre-written script for opening statements. The opening statements are always the showstarter, the explanation of what was now known as the official series of events. These are the facts in the eyes of the law. These are the facts in the eyes of the law now that the defence must prove their innocence in all cases, not the other way round as it was pre-rebellion. Innocent until proven guilty was seen as a barrier to the proper conviction of vile criminals, so abolished early on in the law changes, speeding up trial lead times and ultimately ensuring punishment is swift and efficient, satisfying the public's need to see justice carried out. They were invested, had voted, and now they wanted their desired outcome. The court had filled further. The defence had settled at their desk, and my co-counsel had joined me while I had remained laser focused on the case files, looking at the crime scene photos to galvanise myself into ensuring the outcome that was required of me. We were just waiting for the jury to be called by the judge, and then the main event, the new Londinian batterers' arrival in court to face the people's justice at last. Ready for the circus to begin, I hear my co-counsel's voice whisper in my ear. I jumped a little as I turned my attention to him from the picture of Sarah Watkins, the victim, laying in a puddle of her own blood, scalped, and lifeless eyes bulging from their broken and collapsed sockets. You know me, Jeremy, always ready for the show, no matter how grotesque or overhyped. I flashed a half-hearted smile at him as he rested himself down next to me. Shema, I really do think he didn't do it, you know. Something just isn't right about it all. His confession was too quick, he knew the consequences, and he just admitted it all, just like that. Jeremy had felt this right from the start. From the first time he saw the case files, he had that feeling we all have sometimes as prosecutors. This one is innocent, even if the evidence tells us a guilty story. I know what you mean. Remember what I've always said to you. We don't care if they are guilty or not. The same as the defence. We are given the story, we tell it to prove what we have been told to prove, and the rest is down to the 25 people selected for the jury. We're absolved of responsibility of guilt or innocence. I knew that I always sounded almost bionic when I spoke these words, repeating what my mentor had told me a decade earlier, but it is the only way I could ensure that he would do well in his role. A jury that was selected by the prosecution only, filled with people who will heavily sway towards a guilty verdict on bias and personal feelings on the case. We are, Jeremy, not here. You know we can't talk like that here. We don't know what is being recorded. Stop and just do your job. I quickly moved my focus back to the case files, reading a witness statement that put Letterman at the crime scene. I had this, even with the doubts I had deep down about Letterman's guilt. An ear-piercing alarm drilled its way through my ears to my brain, the noise that indicated it was time to stand and pledge allegiance to the new Great Britain flag, the People's Leadership Panel and the Grand Master of Justice, a practice I was well versed in, but still found rather disconcerting. The ritual all played a part in how we saw the new legal process. The wording of the pledge reminded us that we acted at the will of the people, and we, the legal system, were an extension of the glorious new Great British people's leadership. The room became silent as the alarm subsided. Everyone stood, and the only noise was the scraping of chairs and the placing down of anything a person was holding. Every member of the court team, except the defence, who were not required to take part, held their arms across their chest and recited the pledge. We, the people's representatives of New Great Britain, pledge our absolute and unmoving allegiance to the citizens of our proud and reborn nation. We attest that we will, even under duress or at the threat of life, ensure justice is carried out and the people's will be done. With every fibre of my being, I will carry out the people's work and will ensure all punishments are proportionate to the level and vileness of the crimes committed. Hail the new world, hail the new era, hail New Great Britain. At this point of proceedings, a door opens and a tune similar to, but not quite the same as God Save the King or Queen, played, and the judge entered the room. We all bow, and after she sits in her oversized purple leather Chesterfield chair, she says, "Hail New Britain." Our cue. We can sit down. Judge Mariam Mandel residing. A disembodied voice erupts over the internal sound system. The judge turns to me. Chief Prosecutor Patel, have you selected the members of the jury, and are they to the satisfaction of the People's Republic? Yes, Your Excellency. Selected and confirmed, all 25. I sit down after confirming. Good. Bring in the jury and open the gallery, and bring in the victim's family, the judge barked at the usher at the back of the room. The victim's family are allowed in court, but the accused must not have any family present at the trial. Not even in the so-called public gallery. Any family member found there will be imprisoned for 5 years. The accused, or should I say the criminal, as the new legal system calls them, must be shown they are a disgrace to society and they deserve no family and no support, right from the time of arrest. The noise in the court bellowed louder, chatting in the public gallery and the rattling of treats and sweets that people had brought with them to enjoy the show. The slow entrance of the victim's family quietly talking to each other and crying into tissues in each other's upper arms as they filter into the viewing box to the right of the court. The jury enter the jury box, each placing their thumb on a fingerprint reader to prove that they are who they are supposed to be. We don't want rogue members of the public finding their way into the jury and skewing the vote away from the guilty verdict. Each member of that jury was handpicked by my team to have a connection to the victim, whether through loss of a loved one in violent circumstances, a natural bias against men, or a parent of young children. Even every jury member is there for one reason: to get a guilty verdict. The jury settle, all looking ready to take on the challenge of sending this monster down. We all know what he has done, the jury more than most of us. They have spent the last week in a hotel where they have been shown news articles and social media streams of the vile acts of the villainous person. The press panels held to make them famous after this would have also prepared them for the road ahead as they make their life-shattering decision in a few weeks' time. Bring in the victim, the judge boomed into the microphone in front of her. The room is silent. You could hear the breathing of every person in the room. No one moved. Then the clinking of chains getting closer and closer. Heavy footsteps on stairs and the dragging of chains across the lip of steps fills the court. Then the gasp. The gasp always comes when the criminal enters the dock. That sits right in the middle of the court for everyone to see. Letterman stands at around 6'4" in a bright pink jumpsuit. His criminal number LDR001 on a removable patch on his attire. The number has meaning. L equals Letterman, DR equals death row, and 001, the first person to be housed there, and ultimately die there. He is covered in chains, more than is needed to hold him, and enough to make him feel the immense weight of his crime and the weight of the hatred of the nation. Letterman's face is covered with a red mask. He cannot see out of it, and it was put over his face just before he entered the dock, just out of sight of the court. He must hear the proceedings. but we should not have to see his face until sentencing. Before that, he must remain unseen and blind. I turn back to the judge and nod to let her know I'm ready. Let the performance at last commence. I turn to the cameras to my right. At least 20 of them all turn towards me as I push my chair backwards to allow me to stand as I refer to my notes one last time. I know this is the last view of these before I perform my well-rehearsed play for the world. The last 2 years boil down to this one moment. I sashay my way to the front of the dock where Letterman is still standing, jingling in his chains, blind to the room and unaware of the magnitude of what is going on. No idea that I am taking centre stage to rip apart his life and send him to his demise. I clear my throat as I look up to the dock. This man is a demon. He is the worst of us. This man is everything we want to not be in life. The reason we have built this new life for ourselves. This man, Paul Letterman, is the reason why New Great Britain has had to protect itself. I stroll meaningfully across the court towards the cameras, look directly at the camera with a sign above it saying NGB News, as I know the channel will have the most viewers. I point at the dock towards the criminal within it as he moves his head around, trying to work out where my voice will come from next. Paul Letterman, the new Londinian batterer, the vile creature that took the life of an innocent 24-year-old girl, Sarah Watkins, to hide a sick secret he didn't want his family to know. He stands trial today for the crime of murder, the first person to face the death penalty for almost 100 years on this soil. I move again, floating across the court like a swan on a calm lake. To the world, a beautiful, effortless movement. While in my head, I am panicked and flapping my thoughts like the legs of the majestic bird just below the waterline. In March 2062, just over 2 years ago, Letterman attacked Sarah Watkins. She never told anyone, fearful of the consequences, but he did. The proof of this is she was pregnant with a baby that DNA evidence proves paternity. Paul Letterman matched that DNA of the baby with 89% accuracy. I hold my attention with the jury. They all look at me with a look of horror and disdain. Not for me, but for what I am saying, the story I am building. A few members of the panel to look towards the day-glow pink figure in the dock as his head sinks down, facing the floor as he submits to his blindness. I assume he is still listening as he feels the chains pulling down on him to the floor. Some jurors shake their heads in disgust in his direction. To hide his previous crime, this brute followed and stalked this young woman for the next few weeks. He followed her social media, took photos on a phone found in his house of her at work, going to the gym, eating lunch with her friends, and meeting her mother at the theatre. Sarah loved the theatre. She met her mum there regularly to watch independent performances by amateur dramatics groups. I moved again, slipping past the defence table as the defence lawyer looks at me as if he is burning into my soul, trying to find a redeeming characteristic in me. In this performative state, he would not find it. I am not me. I am a storyteller. I have no soul in that moment. I am a character built to ensure the guilty verdict is achieved, no matter the cost. Letterman continued this relentless shadow-dwelling behaviour for months until one day, the 1st of August 2062, he notices that Sarah started to grow, that her belly is poking out further, that she is glowing, as pregnant women do. He panics. He is fearful that he has done of what he has done to her. His hideous deed has created life, and this will be his undoing. I was standing in front of the dock again, every person in the room watching and listening. I no longer cared what the criminal was doing. This was my stage and everyone wanted to hear my voice. Potentially billions of people would be watching this milestone moment of new great British history. And I was feeling invincible, infallible, defined in my own presence. I am making history. This hideous excuse for a human being, this man that has denigrated every purpose of this new great nation, defies all that we as people stand for. He then decided to message Sarah. He messaged her on all her social media profiles, 14 different messages in total, the same message 14 times. These messages were sent at 3 a.m. on the 4th of August 2062. This is the content of the message. I gesture around the room. A round screen, similar to the ones you will know from large stadiums, flickers on above everyone's head. The message sent to Sarah Watkins from Paul Letterman's new Great British social app to Sarah's social media profiles appears on screen. I read this out to the court as everyone, the judge, jury and the spectators are giving me their full attention. Sarah, I hear that you are pregnant. This child is going to be part of me, my blood. Please meet me to discuss the future. I know it is difficult. I know I have done horrible things to you, but this baby needs me in its life. Please meet me outside the New Hope building in Canary Wharf at 11 p.m. today, 4th of August. I need to see you, please. The room is staring at the screen, open-mouthed and appalled. Sarah then replies from her Facebook account. I hold my hands out towards the screens. They flicker and it changes to her message. I read this aloud, making sure I soften my voice to emphasise that Sarah is a victim. I really don't want to meet you. You scare me. I know you have been following me. I can't prove it yet, but I will. Please leave me alone. The screen changes again, showing Paul's reply, which I read out, deepening my voice and changing my stance to appear more intimidating. I want to talk to you. I want to make sure you are looked after. This baby needs looking after. I don't know what you mean about following you. I have not at all. I promise you I have not. But I do want to help. Please let me help. The public gallery rattles with people eating their snacks. The victim's family cry and hold each other. I read the next message back from Sarah to Paul. I don't know why you have changed your social media accounts, but it is creepy. You have followed me. I have seen you, hiding behind bins and cars I walk past. I have ignored it as I feel sorry for you. This baby is mine, not yours. I don't want you to help. I don't need your help. I have a support network. Goodbye, Paul. I am freeing myself of you. This will be my last message to you, and I am moving soon, so you will never see me again, even from a stalkerish distance. The screen then scrolls down to show that Sarah then blocked Paul on all accounts. I walk to the middle of the room, looking directly at the jury. Sarah was found dead 24 hours later at 2 a.m. on the 5th of August. Her body was found battered, her skull damaged so badly, not even dental records could be used to identify her. She had been scalped, her eye sockets so badly damaged that her eyes were no longer in the sockets. I'll show you photos later of this, but I warn you, these are the worst things that you will have ever seen. I turned back towards the fluorescent jumpsuit in the dock. Letterman, the criminal, stood in the dock after bashing Sarah's head in, hitting it at least 40 times with an iron bar, later found in his shed. He uses a kitchen knife to cut her open. We believe in an attempt to remove the baby. The evidence of this prior crime. The link to this one. He was either disturbed or he didn't know what to do, but he hacked her stomach, leaving 20 gashes in her belly. I moved towards the cameras again, aware they are a large part of this show. The ones who will pay me for me to appear on TV shows, want a film of my life, the ones that will make me rich. I performed to the cameras. Where was Sarah found? I shrugged my shoulders to indicate a big moment. I looked to the floor and back the cameras. In an alleyway behind a large dumpster at the side of the New Hope building, New Canary Wharf. Her time of death is thought to be around 11 p.m. on the 4th of August 2062. The very time that this beastly creature had asked her to meet him in the location he requested her to be at. The messages are found on Sarah's phone, linked back to the phone of Letterman's, an additional phone, one that he had only purchased 6 weeks before the murder. The police attended his home and they found the phone under a floorboard in the bathroom, along with clothes covered in blood, all his size and made for someone of tall stature. As you will see, he stands at 6'4". They also found a blood-covered iron bar in the shed. It matches the murder weapon forensics. Photos of the murder weapon, the phone and the clothes are flashing across the screens in the court. The blood on the iron bar matches Sarah Watkins. I lean forward. I make sure the cameras can get a good shot as I readjust my facial expression, so I am obviously horrified by what I say, as well as sad and despairing. Then the phone was unlocked, and there were months of photos of Sarah and her family, showing that for the 6 weeks that Paul had owned this phone, he had followed Sarah pretty much every day. Over 2,000 photos of Sarah, her family, friends and colleagues show the level of obsession this fireman had towards her before deciding to take this gorgeous, talented young girl's life, all because he didn't want to meet her. She didn't want to meet her attacker and share her child with him. I sat back in the chair again and turned towards the jury. After his arrest, Paul Letterman, the man in the dock, never denied the charges against him. The only response he had was one sentence and never spoke to the police again. He said, "Yes, I did it." Nothing more. This led to an extended interview process with him to try and find out more. He never answered another question, denying the family any true understanding of what happened. He has caused more pain by enjoying his silence and playing a twisted game with the legal services of this great country. He hasn't even given a defence to his defence team. They have chosen the defence you will hear for him. They are going to say he's crazy. He isn't. He is evil. He has refused to enter a plea, so there is an assumption of a not guilty plea to allow for a trial, as we are a fair country that believes in true justice. As I reached the end of my dark and twisty symphony, I stood back up and took one last lap of the court. This trial is a landmark for New Great Britain. The result will determine our future, will change us forever, and ensure the deterrent put in place 10 years ago stands strong in future. So Sarah did not die for nothing. That her story will not repeat, or a family will not have to go through this process again. If you give the only verdict that makes sense at the end of this trial, the deterrent will stand strong, and devils like this man will think twice before taking the life of an innocent person. I had made my way over to the victim's family box by this point. You, the jury, hold the future of not just this family and their ability to move on in your hands, but the future of this nation. We have gone through so much to create and keep us safe. I beg you to follow the lead of 78% of this great nation, and make sure another Sarah does not happen again, at least without the ultimate price being paid for doing so. You are the future of New Great Britain, and will be the shining stars that tell the world that we do not accept evil in this country. I walk back to my desk with a twinkle in my eye and a little swagger in my walk. As I reach my desk, the court stands up and gives me a standing ovation, including the judge. After the ruckus calms down, the judge thanks me for such a wonderful explanation of these heinous crimes committed by a monstrous criminal. Jury, please take the words of the chief prosecutor seriously. This is a very important trial and sends a message across the country and around the world about what our great country will accept. You change the future of this land within these walls. Remember that. The judge turns to the defence barrister and says, "Your turn, Mr. Turner. Good luck." She glares at him as if he is a disgrace to the legal system and the country. Callum Turner, the defence lawyer in the trial, stands up to take his place on the stage. He is obviously overwhelmed by it all. Callum was a lawyer for a decade before the systems changed. Most defence lawyers are at this point as they disagree with the way the legal system has changed. And the only way they can change it is to fight it from within. And try and win the hearts and minds of the jury. The problem with this is even I am not sure the people of New Great Britain as a whole have hearts. They are emotionally cut off from each other, and their minds have been washed into thinking of the country first, and are filled with punishment over rehabilitation, hatred over forgiveness. I knew, even then, that we were lost. We had given every piece of our humanity away during the rebellion. Change had to happen. We needed to do something. Government was out of control. No decisions were being made. We never moved forward. We had forgotten about the people being ruled over. The question is, was the change the right way to do it? I didn't know at the time, and still don't know now, but this trial was a test for me, and I am still not sure if I passed it or failed it. I was ready to hear what Callum had to say, because it seemed impossible to change any minds and warm any hearts in this situation, but I wanted to see him try. Callum looked like he was shaking. He was looking at the floor, wringing his hands together in front of his stomach. Then suddenly he composed himself, held his head up, smiled at the jury and began. Mr. Letterman has confessed in the eyes of the law as he said one sentence, a sentence that Miss Patel misquoted. She said the sentence was, "Yes, I did it." Mr. Letterman did not say that. He actually said, "Yes, it was my fault." This is not the same. He didn't admit to the crime. He took responsibility for it. He never admitted to the crime itself. He has not uttered a single word since that day, not only to the police, but to anyone. He has not spoken to his family. He has not spoken to me. He has neither told me he is guilty nor innocent. In juxtaposition to my performance, Callum never once looked away from the jury. No big show for the cameras, just hyper focus in the jury, the decision makers right now. Not in the future. There was no showboating, no trying really, just honesty. His own personal honesty, but honesty nonetheless. I am here to advocate for a person who I truly believe didn't commit this crime. I think he is protecting someone who, I don't know. Mr. Letterman has a large family, with many males across it. 89% DNA match is not a negligible margin. It is a large margin, and could indicate that any of those males in his close family is the father of Sarah's child. Callum continued to focus on the jury, and not the rest of the court or the cameras. The people filming from the box seemed to be getting frustrated that they were only getting the back of his head in the shots, and nothing to use in a dramatic content sense. I do not deny that this is a horrendous crime. It is horrific. I'm disgusted by what has happened here. I am here to say we have the wrong man, and that man has chosen to take responsibility for it, to take it on his shoulders for some reason, and this is why he has remained silent, not because he is crazy, but to ensure he doesn't implicate the person while also not lying simultaneously. Still not changing focus, Callum continued. I have no case to present to you, as I have no alternative person to specifically put in front of you. I can't link any one person to this crime, including Paul. The photos could have been taken by any member of his family. They are a close family and spend a lot of time at each other's houses. There were 12 days between the murder and finding the murder weapon, clothing and phone at Paul's house. In that time, over 30 people visited, often staying overnight and having opportunity to hide them in his house. The current system means Paul has to defend himself, has to prove his innocence rather than the prosecution proving his guilt. But that is impossible in this case. By staying silent, he confirms his guilt under the current law, but has never admitted guilt, just to feeling guilty. Callum sighs, looks to the floor again, moves forward to his desk. He stands by his chair, ignoring the cameras. All I ask is you consider that he may not be guilty of a crime. One that if found guilty by decree of public opinion, he will pay the ultimate price, his life. Do we want the first time this law is used for it to be contentious? We are unsure, and we could be ending an innocent person's life because he chose not to speak. That's a silly decision, I agree, but it isn't monstrous, it isn't evil, it is loyal, and misguided protection of a family member, does that warrant the death penalty? You need to ask yourself that throughout this trial. If you are unsure, I implore you to look past emotive reactions and find him not guilty. You can't doubt this. You have to be sure. Callum sits down and puts his head in his hands, shaking it slightly, whispering to himself, and it looked like he was saying, "Please, please, please, please." The judge was sat looking at the floor. She looked towards the defence desk and asked Callum, "Have you finished your opening statement?" She had not been listening to any of it. Callum nodded at her, looking defeated. He knows it's all for nothing. The verdict was decided during the jury selection, and the time the jury had spent in the hotel being fed biased NGB news feeds prior to the trial starting. I suppose he wasn't wrong. The trial lasted 15 days in total. The jury ate up every word that myself and Jeremy put in front of them, listened to every witness we called, read every message, listened to every theory we had on how Letterman had become obsessed, how he was addicted to sex, as he had 8 children with 6 different women, none of them his wife, who he had a further 5 children with. It was a slam dunk as far as I could see. Conversely, the jury showed no interest in evidence for the defence. They whispered to each other, played with their fingers, adjusted their sitting position, anything but listened to Callum or any of the witnesses or professional psychologists that gave reasons why Letterman may remain silent, why he would say it was his fault, theorising that in any other time prior to the rebellion, these arguments would have been heard and well argued. On the 11th of August 2064, the jury in the trial of the People of New Great Britain versus Paul Allen Letterman was instructed to come to a verdict. They left the courtroom at 11 a.m. after instructions were given by the judge to take the role of juror seriously. Find the right verdict for the people. They must have been shown evidence from the defence that Letterman was not guilty of this crime, and if they had failed to convince them beyond reasonable doubt, they must convict the criminal of murder. We all left court. I planned to go back to the office and wait there for the verdict. I assumed a day or so, as I knew there might be some questions. I was pretty sure I had the verdict I had worked for, but it wasn't as much of a slam dunk as I had expected. And I really had to work at times during the trial to discredit the defence. Callum had put up a fairly strong fight, I suppose, considering the situation, so I wasn't quite 100% sure I had won. I was wrong. I left the court, was in a taxi at 12:15 p.m, and I received a text. The text read, "Verdict in, return to court." I'd received this text hundreds of times, but never this quickly. My heart sank. They surely would not have come to a guilty verdict this quickly. Damn. I had misread it. I had selected the wrong jury. I had utterly misread the room. No way are they deliberating for less than an hour and convicting when the only sentence is death? Not for the first time in 100 years. That was not possible, not even in New Great Britain. I jumped out of the taxi. I ran back to the court. I was shaking as I returned to the desk. I had sat at the desk that I had sat at for more than 2 weeks. I sat waiting for the pomp and ceremony. The same process happens at a verdict as the start of a trial. The pledge to the flag, etc., the alarms, the judge calling back the jury and the criminal, who again is chained and masked. By the time the court settled, again, it was clocking on to 1:30 p.m. Letterman was stood in the dock, in the same red mask. It is worth mentioning the red mask is for a murderer. Each crime has a different colour, but red is for murder. He had 2 very burly guards at each side of him. The judge nods towards the guard to indicate it is time to remove the mask. Time for the verdict and sentence. He can now see the people who hold his fate in his hands for the first time. The guards roughly but ceremoniously removed the mask. Paul was bald-headed, had blue eyes which were sunken deep in his head. He looked more tired than I had ever seen a human being look. He looked around the room, disorientated, trying to see where his life-changing blow was going to come from. He eventually finds the jury with his deep blue eyes, and he doesn't move his gaze from them again. The judge addresses the jury. Have you, the jury of the People's Republic of New Great Britain, allocated a foreperson to represent you? The jury reply in unison, yes. Would the jury foreperson please stand? The judge keeps her focus on the jury. A tall, thin woman with long blonde hair looks right at Letterman as she stands up and then turns to the judge. Please confirm that you have been voted as the foreperson for this jury, and the jury have agreed that you may represent them all in this court and deliver the verdict in this case. The judge asks the middle-aged woman. I remember her. She was a mother of 2, and her husband had been murdered in the rebellion by the losing side. The perfectly biased juror for this new British era. Yes, that is correct, the juror replied. What have you, the jury, decided in the case of the People's Republic of New Great Britain versus Paul Allen Letterman on count 1 of the arraignment, capital murder? The woman turned back to Letterman, smiled, turned back to the judge and said, guilty. The court erupted in cheers of celebration, people jeering at the criminal and throwing the snacks they had been enjoying at him. After 10 minutes, the room calmed down and the judge spoke. Thank you, jury, for bringing the verdict the people deserve. You are dismissed. The jury left the court and the judge turned to her usher and nods. The usher climbs the steps of the judge's box, which stood about 9 feet above the courtroom floor, but was level with the dock. The usher places a black mask, very similar to the one worn by the criminal, over the judge's face. The mask is meant to indicate that justice is blind, or at least it's meant to be. The judge speaks and her voice has been magnified and it almost echoed around the room. Paul Allen Letterman, you have been found guilty of capital murder, the sentence for which is death, and death is the only sentence I can pass when a criminal is found guilty of this crime. Paul is looking at the floor. It was hard to tell if he was crying as he was weighted down so much by the chains and had shook throughout the trial. The victim's family did not take their eyes off him the whole way through the sentence. You'll be taken from here, back from where you came from, and then, within 72 hours, at the time that will be confirmed with the executioner, taken to a legally sanctioned place of execution, where you will be decapitated by the Halifax gibbet, which will end your life to protect the people of New Great Britain from your evil actions. The judge then instructed the guards to take Letterman down. It complied and followed them down with no resistance. He looked directly at me with hollow eyes as he left. The blue had almost gone from them and been replaced with dark shadows of greyish black. I looked away. The weight of the result of my repulsive show I had performed over the preceding 2 weeks sat on my shoulders. I left the courtroom. Callum was outside, and he looked me dead in the eye, tilted his head and said, well done, you got what you wanted. Great show for the cameras as well. You'll be a millionaire by the end of the week. He walked away, didn't look back at all, and I knew our friendship was over. As I realised this was so divisive, I would have this reaction for the rest of my life, and in the same moment I realised I deserved it. There were monsters in that courtroom, but they were not in the dock.